pressure points when you're traveling. In Luke's gospel today, Jesus is traveling with the disciples. And as he's traveling, there's this large crowd of people who are following him. And they're sort of caught up in the moment. They see this religious guy, and he looks really cool, and he looks like he knows what's going on, and so they're following him. And Jesus turns around, and he tells them, unless you're willing to give up the pressure points in your life, your family, your friends, your possessions, and even life itself, unless you're willing to give up those pressure points, you can't be my disciple. I thought that was a lot of pressure to put on people who barely even know him. And he turns around and says, don't get caught up in the moment. You got to be like a right lane driver and plan ahead. Because who wants to build a house or a tower without thinking it through? Or who wants to go to war without thinking through the consequences? So he's inviting these people to plan ahead. I don't know about you, but I'm not the greatest at planning ahead for things. And so I went to text study this week, and we're looking at this text, and Deaconess Deb assured me that it's okay, I don't have to plan ahead. You don't remember saying that? Well, that's what I heard. Okay, maybe you didn't exactly say that. What she did say was, on the one hand, it's actually a good idea to plan ahead. It makes sense. When you're building a house or going to war or just in general, planning ahead is a good idea. On the other hand, as much as we might want to, as much as we might try really hard to plan ahead, sometimes things in life happen and we're not able to predict them, we're not able to know they're going to happen. And so as much as we want to plan ahead, sometimes we're not able to fully plan ahead. Does that sound more like, okay. So on the one hand, it's good to plan ahead. On the other hand, sometimes it's tough. But in either situation, you feel that pressure point. You feel the pressure of life. As I think about some of the pressure points in our own lives, I'm drawn to that cross, where those moments, whether we're a left lane driver or a right lane driver, those moments when the pressure is on and we feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. But one of the cool things, not only about this gospel reading, about being a disciple and following Jesus and how much pressure there is with that, is that Jesus takes on that pressure for us. As the nail was driven into his left arm, as that pressure was put on Jesus on the cross, he took on the pressure that we sometimes feel with our friends and family. As that nail was driven into his right arm on the cross, and that pressure was applied to his right arm, Jesus took on our pressure for our possessions, the things that we hold so dear, those objects in our lives that are so important to us. As that nail was driven into Jesus' feet, the very thing that he stood on, Jesus took on that pressure of even life itself. As Jesus hung there on the cross and died, he took on the pressures of our families. He took on the pressures of our possessions. He took on the pressures of life itself. And so it kind of helps us when we encounter those pressure points in our own lives. I'm thinking about all of the fall programming that's happening. The kids going back to school. For some, maybe that's actually a relief. But planning for work, planning for all the fall activities, sports, everything starting up. I'm sure many of us are feeling the pressures of life. But even in those pressures, our God is right there with us and knows exactly what those pressures are like. Next Sunday, as we anticipate Rally Day and all the fun events, we'll also be remembering the events of September 11th, 2001, and the pressure that still exists as we fear for our friends and our family. But Jesus is right there in those pressure points and knows what those pressures are all about. Or maybe with all the earthquakes and the fires and the floods and the hurricane and the storms, all these natural disasters, we're living in fear and we're feeling the pressure. But actually, it doesn't matter what the situation is. Our God knows those pressure points. And our God is with us every step of the way in those pressure points. So my hope and prayer for all of us this week, just like brakes on a bike, sometimes those pressure points can be good. But whether we're a left lane rider or a right lane rider, we may know that God is in every one of those pressure points of our lives. Amen.